welcome to the show.
Hey, Will.
Now, this photo doesn't mean much to a lot of people, but me and you, there's a bit of meaning behind this photo. It was the first time you had a Muay Thai fighter competing. Prior to that, Nemesis Martial Arts was just an MMA gym. And it was also the first time that you guys snuck me backstage into the change room, into the corner. And like, that means a lot to me because, you know, most corners only have about 3 spots and you've given up one of them to give space to a guy and a camera just hanging around. And it was a nice experience to go through the motions, being backstage, walking up to the ring and not directly be part of the fight, but capturing it my way. What was it like bringing up your first Muay Thai fighter?
I actually remember this, yeah, because like you said, it was our first ever Muay Thai fighter to jump onto a nighttime pro show. Prior to that, we had people on just like novice events and things like that. And I suppose the thing is, when you're making that transition from fighter to coach, and then becoming a coach that produces fighters, that's probably one of the biggest steps that you can take in a fighting career. And it was quite nerve-wracking, and I still get nervous to this day. And I remember doubting myself as a coach. You know, had I put in enough effort into this guy, had I trained him hard enough to jump in for that bout. Yeah, but as the years sort of progress, I guess I get more confident in my own ability as a coach to put people into the ring.
Yeah. Now, you've been around the scene, you've been at pro shows, amateur shows, novice shows. For you as a coach, what's it like bringing up someone for the very first fight, whether it be amateur, pro, or even novice?
It's quite emotional, especially when the guys start with you from beginner level, because they come to you having just real basics or beginner level skill set, and then you put in so much time into them, you put in a lot of effort into them, and then you take them to that to having their first fight. And the thing is, I know exactly what they go through as well. I go through the ups and the downs with them. When they win, I feel good, and sometimes when they lose as well, I feel the pain that they go through, because I know the amount of time, I know the amount of effort that it took to get to that. It took to get to those couple of minutes in the ring. You know, a lot of people just see that end product and commentate and say, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that. But they didn't see the 6 months or the year or the 2 years preparation that it took to get to that stage.
Yeah.
I definitely do feel emotional when I see guys start from scratch all the way into the ring.
This was also another cool moment too, because I don't know if you remember, but this was taking that the North Melbourne Boxing and Fitness.
Yep.
This was years after we both met at this gym, and then coming back here after you've had your own full-time gym. It was almost nostalgic, even seeing the old trainers there. When I'm at daytime events, it's a very casual setting, casual feel. But then I think back about people fighting for the first time. To them, that's a big deal. To them, that's, you know, it's a big moment for them. But people like us, you know, it does seem quite casual. But then I remind myself, it might be very casual for you, but you got to think to them that might be the turning point in the martial arts journey.
Oh, definitely. It's like what you said. Like now, I feel it's a bit more casual. But then when to the fighter themselves, when they're at these events, even though it's a daytime event, even though it might be their first novice fight, this to them, it defines who they are as a fighter. You know, they put everything into the decision. You know, they take it, whether they lose, whether they win, whether they lose. It's at the end of the day, it was just a novice show, but to them it means everything, and that's why I can relate to how much it means to them as a fighter.
Yeah, the famous Lilydale shed, and you cornering with our famous Uncle Ramel. What do you remember about these kind of daytime shows?
Lilydale used to have the reputation where we would only put our tough guys on. So when Dennis and I are looking at fight shows, whether or not to put certain people on, Lilydale had the reputation where we would only put tough guys on, because even though it was supposed to be inter-club sparring level intensity, some of the bouts got pretty heated. So some of the bouts were pretty much full contact. As a coach, I would never throw anyone I would never throw anyone into a competition if I didn't think they were ready. So if it was a novice level event, I would put people who I think were suitable for it. And that was the same with here as well. Like I knew, because of its reputation, I knew that some of the bouts would get a little bit heated, and I wanted all our guys and girls to be 100% ready.
Yeah.
For a proper bout when they jumped into Lilydale.
What you said about only putting in the tough guys, what are your signs on selecting which student would be suited for which particular show? What stands out to you?
Good question. It comes down to the individual. The main thing is that people have to be able to, athletes, they have to be able to deal with the tough time. And you can see that a lot in the gym, you know. So if people are preparing for fights, sometimes people crumble under pressure. So whether it be hard pad rounds, whether it be sparring, but then some people excel. You know, they might not be the most technical sort of fighters, but they just thrive off that style of training.
I was also asking Dennis this. With all your experience now as a coach and with your old experience as a martial artist and fighter, what are some of the signs or checklists you have when putting a fighter onto a promotion?
Now we're real strict with who we put onto promotions and shows. We have a pretty rock solid fight team at the moment now. My number one criteria for putting on anyone into a amateur bout, into novice bout, pro bout, is coachability. The coachability of the athlete is what I regard as probably the most important thing when it comes to competing.
Flashback to 2009, 2010, I believe.
Yeah.
This was one of the first time I saw you fight live, and I wasn't even doing photography properly back then. And there were a lot of fights back out in the country. This was in Shepparton, 3-hour drive to and from the venue. Some people would stay the night. Other people would be driving back in pitch black, hoping not to hit a kangaroo along the way back. What was it like at these kind of shows, and what was the Muay Thai scene like that back in the day?
I feel the Muay Thai scene was a lot different back then. It was a lot smaller. So in Melbourne back then, I think there was probably only about 3 major gyms. And then even though there was only 3 major gyms, and then in regards to promotions, there was only a couple of promotions. So I wouldn't say they were small, because they were still pulling in decent crowds. I feel like the scene has changed a lot. It's become a lot more mainstream. That's what I think is the biggest change from it now.
What were your memories from this particular fight? It was, from memory, probably one of your biggest title fights at that time for a WKA title, and coming back from Thailand too. You had that all lined up for you. There was a lot of hype behind that too. You had the perfect training camp. What was it like going into this particular fight?
Oh, I remember this one quite clearly. Like, my training and preparation for this was perfect. I'd just come back from Thailand for a 3-month stint. Body felt good, mind felt good. My opponent was someone from my gym had already fought him previously before. So someone from my gym had already beat him before, and so we had a pretty solid game plan. Going into it, I probably felt like this was probably my best, one of my best performances, just because everything was on. Mind was on, fitness was on point, and everything was good.
I think we were both lucky enough to be at the very first Warriors Way, and it's still happening at the same venue at the Doncaster Shopping Town Hotel. This was one of the last times I was at a fight show as a standing guest, because, you know, if you're a standing patron, you come late, you get the back of the venue, you can't see anything. You might be standing against someone taller than you or stuck behind a pillar and you can't see anything. This was another big fight for you too. What was it like at this particular promotion?
I remember this one as well. So this one was, I forgot. It was under a year after the previous fight. I felt this was probably one of my worst performances, to be honest. I just felt like I wasn't able to switch on mentally. I knew that I was capable of much more. And I felt like because I wasn't able to switch on mentally, I wasn't able to perform at my best. And that's why now my coaching is, is a bit different when it comes to this, because it doesn't matter how good at the end of the day, everyone's skill set is basically the same. Everyone can punch, everyone can kick hard, and it comes down to being able to switch it on. And I think that's probably one of the most important things when working with athletes now, is to be able to switch it on in the ring. So probably one of the biggest lessons I learned from this is that I needed better strategies on how to switch on mentally in a fight.
Yeah. And yeah, I wasn't ringside at the time. I was still peeking through the back and trying to see you fight, just see the fight from a distance and see what that was like. What was it like having one of your last professional Muay Thai fights and also starting up a new gym as well at the same time?
I took this loss pretty hard because I knew it was going to be my last fight. I didn't get my fairy tale ending. It was probably an ending that you would like to erase from your memory. But at the end of the day, I don't have any regrets. Whatever happens in our lives happens for a reason. I felt like even though I didn't perform as well in this path, it was a turning point for me to become at the time I didn't realize it, but now I sort of realize that it was a turning point for me on when I became a better coach, because I started to over the few years I started to realize how important the mental game is, what you should be doing as a coach and what you shouldn't be doing as a coach.
Yeah. Also, speaking on the other show with Thomas Ruderman, I was saying to him, I listened to an episode on another podcast talking about the Japanese fighters when they retire, they should aim to retire on a loss, because why else would you retire if you keep winning fights? Then keep going. But if you're having your last fight and you're retired, then that's it. That's when you know it's time to hang it up.
That's an interesting point, actually. It's sometimes people say that you should be retiring on top, and then some people sort of think if you're retiring for a loss, if you're retiring on a loss, you maybe should have given it up before.
Yeah.
But I feel that was the right time in my life to stop. I'd set myself a goal to get as far as I could before I was 30, and then after 30 I would stop, and then grow up.
Now, both you and Dennis aren't just fighters, you're lifelong martial artists. What's it like to continue learning the sport, and also what's it like for you guys to bring in instructors to host seminars to learn from?
I think as a coach, one of the biggest mistakes that coaches make is that as soon as they put on the coach t-shirt, they think they know everything. I feel as soon as you put on the coach t-shirt, it's like putting on a white belt again. You go back to the start. You got to start learning things again. And to be a good coach, you have to constantly be learning as well. Martial arts is constantly evolving as well. And I think that it's good to learn from other people as well. So I remember bringing Sean Frew in. He was MMA striking coach, and so his methods were a bit unorthodox, but he still added a lot to the game as well. Yeah. And that's why Dennis and I both enjoy learning from current fighters, current coaches, existing coaches, and that's why we even bring them in to share the knowledge with our existing fight team as well.
What is there an ideal? How can I put this? What kind of ideal coach would you want to bring in for a seminar?
Ideal coach. I feel some of the best coaches I've worked with are the coaches that have been around for a very long time. It's even some of the coaches that people don't really know too much about. Because at the end of the day, the coach's role is not to be in the limelight. It's to put the fighters into the limelight. And I feel like the more experienced the older coaches have a lot more to offer, because they've been there, they've done it, they've gone through exactly what we've gone through, probably 1,000 times more than we ever will.
Yeah, that goes back to a really good point that you used to say to me, because I've been to a lot of seminars working and also being alongside, and we share our seminar stories too. You used to always say that you rather learn from the coach of a fighter than the fighter themselves, because with a superstar fighter, all you're getting from them is either an autograph or you're learning what works for them, whereas their head trainer, they know what works for all the stable of fighters and they have a lot more input as well. Because we've both been to seminars where you'll just be doing the same combination, jab, kick for half an hour, and then after half an hour you realize, oh crap, that's it.
Oh, definitely. It's I've seen that time and time again with after all the seminars I've been through. It's like what you said. It's even though someone's really good at what they're doing, so a fighter might be really good at fighting and performing in the ring, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're good at explaining it. And I find that their coaches, the people holding the pads for them, the people that taught them how to kick from day one, they're the wealth of knowledge. They're the ones that have a lot to share as well.
And like I said, oftentimes they're the ones that no one knows about.
Yeah, I've got a lot of people don't know the coaches behind some of the big name fighters at the moment now.
How important is it for you as a trainer and martial artist to also be part of the training itself? And that means, jumping into the fight team or sparring with the guys. That's the main difference I found when starting mixed martial arts is a lot of the coaches actually spar and roll as well, whereas you find in a lot of traditional martial arts, the coaches sort of take a step back. Obviously, if they're a lot older, they can't perform, but, you see a lot of young guys, they just take a step back and just tell people what to do. But you guys actually still jump in and show that, hey, this stuff I'm teaching you actually works.
I think that's the most important part. If you're going to call yourself a martial artist, you have to practice, you have to breathe it, you have to live it every single day. I still consider myself, I am still a martial artist because I'm still refining my skill set every single day. The way I refine my skill set is that I'll practice it and then I test it under the fires of competition, and even though I'm not fighting anymore, I still like to jump in and spar with the guys, even though I might not be able to last as many rounds, but I still actually enjoy it.
Yeah, you get a pass though.
Yeah. And it's a saying that one of my coaches said to me as well. Why would you follow a general who's never been to war before? And I think that's one of the most important things. Why would you follow a coach that hasn't been to war before?
You're backstage at a fight show. You taped up the hands. You've got all the gloves prepared. Right now, all you're doing is just waiting for the names to be called to walk up into the ring. Everything's done. What's it like now, waiting in a change room to do walkout?
I feel the emotions backstage haven't changed ever. I still get nervous. I still have my nervous cough and I swallow because I know exactly what it's like. I feel because I know exactly what the fighters go through and how much they've put on the line and how much sacrifices they've made just to get to that moment. And I want to see them perform as well. And yeah, it's just tense. That's all I can say when it's back there. It never gets any better. I think I just learned to disguise it better.
I think being backstage too, there are a lot of tense moments, but there are also a lot of calm moments where people joke around. It's almost like a gathering where you're seeing your old friends. It's like a weekend catch up because you see, when else can you see all the gyms across Melbourne in the one little room? And it can be quite emotional too because, someone wins, everyone's ecstatic. Someone loses, it's a very quiet moment. Just feels like you're part of it together. Someone has a great knockout, they go backstage and everyone's cheering. But, someone gets knocked out, everyone's calm and really counseling. Phillip Lai, main event at a boxing show. I didn't think this day would happen. What was it like training and then leading up to this fight?
This is me trying to relive my glory days in boxing, glory days in fighting. So I think my last fight was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So and then I started boxing because I had a lot of knee issues from Muay Thai, so I've had a couple of surgeries on the knees, and I felt like boxing was just a little easier on the knees. I really enjoyed boxing, and then one of my coaches, they were doing like an in-house sort of event, but like a big scale one. I felt like preparation was perfect for this. Body just wasn't as it was 10 years ago. I still went through all the ups and downs, all the nerves. It was probably about 10 kilos heavier than when I fought 10 years ago as well, which was good because that was one of the most difficult parts, or the parts I hated the most about fighting.
Yeah.
And this time it was different. I feel previously I used to put a lot of pressure on myself to fight, but then this time I just did it because I loved it. Okay, I just really enjoyed it. I didn't tell too many people about it. I just told the people close to me at the gym and the seniors about it, because I wanted them to be a part of it as well. You know, I wanted to set the example that I'm not just going to sit on the sidelines and bark orders at people. As a coach, I'm going to lead from the front line. I'm going to jump in there and have a crack as well, you know?
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because by now you have already built a massive stable of fighters, and you also had a VIP booth for the gym. And I suppose going back to what you said about being a martial artist and learning, you were learning a new discipline in boxing.
I enjoy all forms of combat sports. I don't ever restrict myself to a single style martial artist, because I enjoy the whole learning aspect. I enjoy being a white belt. And then that's why I cross-train in everything. I cross-train in Muay Thai, in BJJ, and boxing as well.
Yep. And that brings us to our last photo, the famous Northcote breeding ground with the famous chair. This was taken shortly after you guys moved in, and I was pretty much training all day as well. And you actually asked me I remember just very vividly, because you asked me to take photos of the gym to promote the gym on social, because you wanted to get a nice presence up, and then you were cleaning up around the gym. And this was a very interesting move, because you previously moved from part-time gyms into your first full-time facility. What was this moment like for you?
I think making that move from just renting out of other gyms and then having our first full-time facility was probably one of the biggest and best moves and best decisions that Dennis and I had ever made. It was scary, because it was committing ourselves to a full-time facility. I feel I was doing personal training outside of this, outside of running this gym as well, still. But it was hard in the first few years just to build it up, you know.
I mean, looking back here, to me back then training, this was all I needed. There was a makeshift ring, mats, bags, S&C area. That was it. And the way we were training back then, it was primarily focused on fighting MMA. Everyone who came here knew what they were getting themselves into. You didn't have to really pretty it up back then, because from that gym to by now, you know, you built yourself a name.
I think, yeah, definitely. So back then, I had a look at one of our old timetables. So pretty much every day, Monday to Saturday, was MMA sparring, 5 to 8.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, we do MMA sparring, and that's only for the pros as well. So now I feel like our system is a lot more structured in the way that we produce fighters. You know, it's a lot smarter as well, the way that we evolved.
It was funny talking to Dennis when he tells me stories about his Carlson Gracie days and at the London Street Fighters Academy. I can only imagine what that was like. And then me and some of the senior guys talking about these Northcote days, telling these stories to the new people, they're thinking, wow, I can't imagine that as well. I can't imagine that. What were some of your memories from these training grounds?
Oh, there's so many fond memories from this place. I just remember just having some tough sessions in there. I felt like back then I was able to train a lot more and jump into the sessions because the gym was a lot smaller. Now as the gym started to get bigger, so I had to step away more from the training aspect and then focus actually on just coaching and then just running the gym.
Yep.
But I reckon probably all the interesting characters that used to come through that gym were probably the funniest moments, probably the most entertaining moments.
11 a.m. to 12 p.m. when you had an open session, people could give you a call and then be there in about 5 minutes because they didn't have a job and then they just wanted to train to be a UFC fighter.
Definitely. I think we used to get a lot more of those type of inquiries just because I think the image of the gym sort of sets the tone as to the type of people you attract. Because this factory was in a warehouse estate, it was pretty deep in Northcote. It was geared towards fighting, and then it attracted people that just wanted to fight.
Also, back then there weren't that many full-time MMA gyms. It was just Thai boxing gyms or BJJ gyms offering MMA classes once a week, twice a week, whereas you offered MMA at a full-time facility, and I guess that would have attracted a lot of interest.
Oh, definitely. I think that was probably one of the biggest cases. But yeah, back then there wasn't too many MMA gyms around, and now there's a lot more. But when you have a MMA facility, you get a lot of people from different styles wanting to come in to test themselves, because they might sort of want to see what MMA is all about.
Yeah. And what are some of your signs that you're looking for a student when they walk in, and what signs do you see in them that they're going to make it in the long run as a martial artist or even a fighter?
The telltale signs of when someone walks in, normally 99.9% of the time, if someone comes in and they say they want to fight, most of the time they don't last. I'm saying actually 99% of the time they don't last. It's always the people that come in that are coachable, that are humble, and then they're just doing it because they like martial arts, or they just want to learn the skill of Muay Thai, or they just want to learn BJJ with no real intention of fighting. They just want to develop themselves. And I usually find those are the people that stick around the longest.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Will. That was awesome.